The Impact Factor is here and more realistic than ever. Now with even more giant enemy crabs. Welcome to the show. A little reference there. The Impact Factor is what happens when two scientists and two best friends get together to talk about video games. My name is the no longer affected to a stomach flu, Alex Samocha, and I'm joined this week, as I am every single week here on the Impact Factor, by the guy who, like he does in his blog, will try his best at any moment to fit cosplay discussion into the show, my co-host, Charles Fliss.
Hey man, I think that the cosplay I need to do next is a giant enemy crab.
Giant enemy crab. Those are deep cuts. I don't know, Fliss, do you remember that? Like that PlayStation PS3, like E3 press conference back in the day? Like that disaster of the one where they announced Ridge Racer! And the PlayStation 3 will cost $599 US.
Who could forget? Who could forget that conference? If the $599 US still sticks in my head.
Oh gosh, yeah. I'd say that was like before we were even like, certainly we were playing games, but we weren't talking or writing about them. But I remember even hearing that, I'm like, oh my god,
dude, that's so far back.
Yeah, we were high schoolers, so it's like,
that's so far back that I was still like totally a supporter of Nintendo in every way.
Wow.
Because I remember hearing that, and I was just like, this is why I play Nintendo, guys.
Wow. One, I hope no Nintendo fans listen. It's the voice of your average Nintendo fan. And two, just wow.
Yeah, so, are we talking smack about Nintendo? Are we going to talk some cosplay? Are we going to talk some virtual reality? I think we are. I'm so excited for this show, man. You know why? Because it's October. October is the best month. We're going to get started with an awesome podcast.
Yes, that's absolutely right. October, anyone who disagrees, I think is just wrong. October is by far the best month. You get all the fall flavors. You get the changing of the season. You get the change in weather. Fall weather is the best. You get fall fashion. And then, of course, October, freaking horror movies, freaking Halloween candy. Oh my god, I'm so excited. We got something special to announce at the very end of this podcast, so please stay tuned in. Please be excited for that.
Yeah, man, dude. October. Oh, I can't even, like, Halloween, it's the weather is perfect. I mean, October is the month where you can wear a scarf without your ass freezing off. Best month. Best month.
Wait, you put scarves on your ass?
Only when you're launching.
Oh, gosh. I don't know how to react to that. Oh, man. And October is always Red October, baby, Cardinals. Woo!
I don't know what that is.
Cardinals?
Cardinals. Dude, I have no idea what you said there.
I was in that, like, fan voice mode. Cardinals! Woo! Go Cardinals!
Yeah, man. Dude, the sports ball. You want to bring up some sports ball?
No, I don't. No, not that
so
sports
happy.
ball where you throw it and
Dude.
it spirals. No.
Cardinals, postseason, Packers, undefeated. There, I kept my sports ball to 4 words.
All right. There we go. Well, I guess undefeated is one word.
Of course it's one word.
So the hyphen, I don't know. Anyway. So Fliss, last time you were on the show, your weak, frail American body broke under the weight of shrines at Japanese festivals. How are your shin splints doing?
Oh my gosh, man. They are healed at last. And it's all thanks to a strict regimen of sitting on my couch and playing video games.
So I'm just going to say to the folks who are listening, we got 2 scientists here, one of whom, within hopefully the next 2 years, will be a doctor. I recommend video games for your health.
This is grossly irresponsible, dude. I mean, yes, I also totally recommend video games for your health, but we should make it clear that we are not qualified medical professionals.
Nah. The folks can figure that out on their own. That's jurisprudence. They can do that on their own.
I think having listened to like the first 5 minutes of the show, they're probably already very convinced that we are not medical doctors.
Yeah, they're like, okay, this is just like a bit they're doing, right? This is.
This is 2 doctors pretending to be idiots instead of 2 idiots pretending to be doctors.
It works both ways.
It's like a palindrome of doctors and I don't know where I'm going with this.
Palindrome, idiocy. I don't know. Whatever. But the impact factor is where I bring my perspectives as a biomedical scientist and combine them with and usually against, Fliss's social scientist worldview to have great discussions about video games. Let's get it started, as we always do, with some news and views.
News and views.
In an academic journal, News and Views collects the best of recent events and findings. Here, Fliss and I scour through the week in video game news to find the stories with the biggest impact. So, Fliss, what story do you want to snipe from me as the number one story of the week again?
Well, I don't really want to talk about it, but I know you want to talk about it.
Now you want to talk. I can see it in your eyes. You hunger for the discussion.
Of virtual reality.
That's right.
So
All right.
much VR news this week. So much VR news. Big VR news.
Give the folks a rundown.
All right, so yeah, we got a bunch of Oculus news, the Samsung Gear VR, partnerships, all kinds of stuff. But I think for me, I'm going to pick out my biggest piece of VR
All right.
news.
Get that little crane game going here.
Yeah,
Quarter.
yeah,
Your
man.
hand is kind of.
Yeah.
We're both imitating crane movements here with our hand.
Yeah. So
Clearly, this makes for compelling radio.
we really do need to do a video cast, man, because then people can see us miming crane games together.
And they're also going to just see. I mean, I don't know, because then they're going to be like, I can't listen to this podcast anymore, because Fliss's face. I just can't with this.
Yeah, they're going to be like, I have to only watch it as a video because I want to look at him all the time.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
I mean, for anyone who's
Folks,
wondering
if
what
you
we look
want to
like,
see his face, email impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know.
you make me sound like a call girl, which is only mildly...
Call 1-800-IMPACT-FACTOR for one-on-one face session with Fliss.
Wow, I'm not going anywhere near that anymore. But for anyone who is actually wondering what we look like, just imagine two hot Ryus.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
Alex is just like the black palette, and I'm the white palette.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. But back to my
leave that
crane
one untouched
game.
as well.
Back to my crane game VR news. Samsung Gear price point $99.
Yep. 99 US. Samsung Gear, 99 US dollars. Oh,
Yeah,
casual,
man.
hooray. I love you.
Yeah, I think this is a game changer. I've complained consistently on this podcast about how VR is going to be too expensive for anyone to want to, jump in who is not super dedicated to trying it out. And I think that this price point makes it realistic for even someone who just is kind of mildly interested or has their curiosity piqued by it to try it out.
Yeah, so let's give a little deep dive here. Let's go a little bit deeper into this. So this is, I'm sure it's confusing for you, the listeners, because it's confusing for both Fliss and I, who try to stay on top of the news. There are a bunch of different virtual reality headsets that are all vying to be the market's number one virtual reality headset. So I'm sure most of you have heard about Oculus, Oculus Rift, Oculus VR, whatever you want to call it. This is kind of the leader of the pack. And then you've got a bunch of different competitors all having their own. Like, you've got the Vive, you've got the Project Morpheus, now called PlayStation VR, and then you've got even some augmented reality with the Microsoft HoloLens. But Gear VR is this thing that's been kind of a known entity for a little while. This is Samsung's attempt. And so this is very different from other VR. This is a headset in which you place your Samsung phone into, like, the visor slot, where the visor would traditionally be for a VR headset, and that acts as your kind of VR experience. And so this Gear VR headset is compatible with the Note 5, the S6, the S6 Edge, and the S6 Edge Plus. And so, to be fair, this $99 price point is a compelling one, but that is on top of already having one of these devices, right? So if you don't have one of these newer, the new entries in the Samsung mobile wheelhouse, it's going to be $300 on top of the $99 to jump onto that board. But then again, it still will be your phone, It's not like you're buying it exclusively to be a VR experience.
Right, and also, because, like you said, this is your phone, this means that people who like the Samsung phones anyway have access to the technology. This means that people who are looking to make an upgrade of a phone, which I think a lot of people are looking to do pretty constantly, may have more of a reason to jump in on one of these phones. There's lots of plans for a phone. Like, you don't walk into GameStop and say, yeah, I'm going to need to get a payment plan on my PS4 usually. People don't usually do that.
Yeah.
And you can do financing for a computer at Best Buy, but that's a pretty terrible idea. But phone plans are, pretty commonplace. So, it's not like you're sitting down and paying that $300 for that phone up front. And that takes some of the edge off of it.
Ooh. Let me just jot a note here. That was a good pun.
Thank you. I need my credit for those puns. That's,
we've got a whole galaxy of puns coming up here.
Oh, I see what you did there. Stepping your game up. I was about to say the score is Fliss 1, Alex 0, but I think I'll give you half a point for that. Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Low-hanging fruit. Well, I do what I can. But yeah, this is an interesting experience, and I think, again, it's good to differentiate Gear VR from the other VR headsets in another way, too. Because these are running off your phones. I mean, phones are insanely powerful, and they're only getting more powerful. But the Gear VR experience isn't going to provide that fully immersive, hyper-realistic graphic VR experience that something like Oculus or something even that Morpheus or PlayStation VR will provide for people. Because it's got to run off of the phone's processor. There's no separate computer. It's not just that you use the phone as a screen. This actually is, the games are running on your phone or on your phablet, which is the Note. To its credit, though, I've heard very good word of mouth. Then again, it's hard to trust any word of mouth about VR since people seem to just be tripping over themselves to be more and more effusive about how much they love VR. But I have heard good things about the VR experiences on the Samsung Gear VR. And I think this $99 price point is substantial because if you already have one of these phones, and there are devoted Samsung people, and certainly this might convert some people who wanted to get a new phone to buying into Samsung. $99 is a great place to start, and I don't think, though, I do think this will be substantial, but I really don't think their targeting of the mainstream audience, which is what they said about this, is really going to be that effective. It's still a $100 accessory that I think unless the games are there, which it makes me question whether or not the games will be there because of this existence you need to fit within the smartphone infrastructure. I think some people are going to buy it, be disappointed because there's only a couple, I can look around at environment games, and then kind of go on the internet and rage about how it was a waste of money.
I think that those people will definitely be there, but I disagree with you. I think that this is going to do something very important in terms of getting the mainstream audience used to VR. I mean, I am super skeptical of VR. I'm kind of hopeful because I want it to work, but I don't actually think it will. And so when you buy a Samsung VR, Gear VR, with your shiny new Samsung phone, which I'm sure you're going to choose to upgrade to now instead of an iPhone, when you do that, I'm really looking forward to trying it out. And maybe that'll persuade me to get on board with it and try it out. And I also think that the mobile space is already so flooded with games that people who are good at mobile programming are going to look at this as a chance to make their game big, to make their game popular. Well, there's going to be a separate chart. This is going to happen. There's going to be a separate chart for VR games on the app stores. And
it's true.
People are going to be looking to get to the top of that. So I think that this could spur kind of, I hate to use an abused word, but spur kind of indie development in the VR space, and that can only be a good thing. That's
true. And I mean, again, VR is only going to succeed when it's in the hands as many people as possible. It's that's the problem. We've even had a whole section here where we've talked about it. VR, it's one of those impossible to sell things. As cool as VR sounds, as cool as the technology is, and how kind of great I can picture the experience, you really can't know, and everyone who experienced it tells you can't know until you've played. And I think there is some credibility to your opinion there, Fliss, because the creators of Monument Valley, one of the biggest games recently on mobile infrastructure, it's so big it was featured prominently in House of Cards Season 3, the Netflix show. Those developers, Us2 is a developer, is creating a game called Land's End, and that's going to be a Samsung Gear VR game. And it's like a puzzle game, exploration game, and you can move things with your eyes, so it kind of feels like you're moving it with your mind. And I've heard a lot of good hands-on with that. And obviously, Us2 with Monument Valley kind of proved that they're great game developers. And so there certainly is gonna be interest, but I don't worry about VR overall, because I think a lot of people are excited about Oculus, and I think PlayStation is gonna lean on all of their developers to get them to develop software for PlayStation VR. But I do worry that, it's like the problem with Apple TV, right? With people who don't have controllers. There's no developers making kind of hardcore controller-based games because no one has controllers. I don't see many people having the Gear VR headset, so why spend all that time and effort and money to make a Gear VR experience when not only is your consumer base so small, but then it's only a small portion of that consumer base is going to be buying all these VR titles. It seems to be a financial obstacle and a financial consideration that you really have to consider that I think a lot of people are just going to opt not to do.
No, it's totally fair. I think the price point is certainly a commitment by the company to pushing it, to trying
right,
to
yeah, they want it in
problems.
people's hands, for sure. That is a competitive price point.
So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens.
I guess on that, too, this talk was all well and good. Oh, well, it's out in the future. No, they announced also Gear VR is launching this November. It's gonna be the first VR headset that's available for the consumer.
Which means if it's good, if it works, it's in a very powerful position.
But it also makes me skeptical. If this is if everyone's hearing how great virtual reality is, and this mobile smartphone-based VR is the first thing they experience, they're gonna be like, well, okay, let's talk about VR as crap. Whereas, Oculus and PlayStation VR, I'm just using those two as examples, are a very different kind of VR experience than the Gear. So I worry that might off-put people who are interested, who try this out and be like, oh no, people were lying to me, VR sucks, and then not give Oculus or PlayStation VR a chance. I don't know.
Yeah, man. Again, I don't have a Samsung phone. Are you actually going to get one?
No.
Oh,
I am
Come
upgrading
on,
this year.
Come on.
I am upgrading
Come
this year,
on.
but I don't.
Boo.
I don't.
Boo. Tweet
Listen,
it,
man,
Alex.
this is hard.
Tweet it, Alex.
This
Tell him
is
to
hard
get a
for me, okay?
Samsung phone. Get on Twitter. He's at Alex Samocha.
No.
Get on there. Tell him to get a Samsung phone and a Gear VR so that I can play it.
Well, next year, Justine will upgrade, and she is almost certainly going to get the new Samsung, so next year. We'll wait till there's a library of games to
What
play.
happened to doing it for the show, man? I mean, I took
Dude, I'm
so
doing a lot
much
for the
crap
show.
from you
More than
about
you.
Tokyo Game Show, and you can't even upgrade to the proper phone for this show?
Oh my god. That, for me, that's like a 4-year commitment. I'm not ready to make that was a 1 weekend commitment for you. I'm not ready to make a 4-year commitment for me.
Boy, man, if you're not ready for commitment, then you may have some other issues in your life.
So yeah, this was coming out of the VR Connect, which was basically a conference. Another piece of news that came out of that was that Oculus and Samsung and VR are aggressively going after video streaming services and video on-demand services to try and bring those videos to a VR headset. And so they announced partnerships with, your standard suite of on-demand, so Netflix, I think Hulu as well. And so I think that's a really cool direction too, because I'm less convinced that I'll enjoy playing games in a VR setting, if nothing else, because I have inner ear issues that I feel like motion sickness might be a serious concern for me. But I think watching on a kind of fully 3D, or not 3D, but a fully peripheral towards all vision, have the screen there, I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I hate traveling. I like going places, but I don't like the actual travel part of it. And the idea of being able to basically strap a mini movie theater on my head, no matter how much of a jerk it makes me look like, sounds super appealing to me.
No, that's true. That's true. And the Samsung Gear VR is 22% lighter now. I think that's an important thing, because one of the main criticisms for people who have demoed these headsets is that, yeah, they're nice, but I can only wear them for 15 or 20 minutes, and then my neck starts hurting. And I think that's still going to be a concern, right? I think all of these Gen 1 VR headsets are going to be too heavy for people to realistically use for a long time. It's last night I was streaming at twitch.tv/megalodon. Man, we're shilling like crazy this episode. I was streaming, and I streamed for 3 hours, and it went by in an instant, and it was fun and fast or whatever. You should hang out with me in the chat.
But you should. He's pretty entertaining.
I'm pretty good. But yeah, I can't even imagine wearing a VR headset for 3 hours. Like, it's exhausting, if not also physically strenuous. So at least they're cognizant of the issue and trying to fix it.
It's just going to take time. Like you said, all these Gen 1 VRs are going to be way too heavy.
That's why don't be an early adopter. I think that's generally a good policy.
Moral of the story, let other people use their money to take the risks and improve the technology for you. Capitalism.
Capitalism. Because, yeah, I mean, I was even tempted by the PlayStation VR, but then this isn't directly related to this, but there were some rumors that the price point of that is going to be hovering around $400 for the headset. So that's like buying a second PS4. So I don't know if I'm ready to dip my... That's some pretty deep waters for me to dip my toe into. I don't know if I'm going to come up with a toe or just freaking snapping turtle took the toe off if I dip it in too deep.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe there might be a megalodon in those waters.
Oh, man. I wish Megalodon exists. All right, let's go on this tangent here because you brought it up. Sharks are awesome, right? We can agree.
Sharks are great. Everybody likes sharks.
Sharks are great. Not everyone likes sharks, but they should.
But the people who don't like sharks are what make Shark Week entertaining.
Badasses of evolution. If you go back and you look at like the prehistoric ancestors to modern day sharks, like even 275 million years ago in the Triassic period, up to like 350 million years ago, sharks look remarkably similar to modern sharks. They hit it. Their evolution got it right nearly 400 million years ago.
See, this is Alex just showing off his inner old curmudgeon. He hates change. He likes things to stay the same. And
wait, Sonny, I like change. I can use it at the laundromat.
Oh, God. I'm not even going to respond to that. My point is that Alex hates change so much that he had to pick his favorite animal based on which animal just didn't change for millions of years.
Oh, well, if that were true, I would say it's your sense of humor.
Yeah, my sense of humor was great millions of years ago.
No, I don't know.
It's great now, too.
I told you, man. With that, this is a galaxy of puns, man. A galaxy of puns. You got the old man laundromat pun.
Yeah, that does put you up 2-1, doesn't it?
I know. You're losing the pun war. The great Punic War. Like the Punic War. Come on, man. That's close.
That was. I was gonna say that might have been close, but it might be more of a Punic victory for you.
Oh gosh, that doesn't count.
Pyrrhic,
Fine, at least get half a point.
Pyrrhic, it's a different word.
Oh god, it's
all it does is nullify your awful pun.
All right, fine. I'm still up 2-1. So yeah, that's the VR news. VR is exciting. It is. Fliss and I are both noted audio-proof VR skeptics, but I think this is a step in the right direction. Again, these things have to be super consumer-friendly to eventually find success. I mean, Gen 1 is not going to be consumer-friendly at all. Nope. They're gonna gouge the hardest of the hardcore and make them buy in. They're going to make them fund Gen 2.
Don't be a whale.
Yeah, don't be a whale. Well, I suppose I won't be. All right, I need to stop. I need to stop. All right, I'll shut my blowhole.
That was good. So you get a point for the blowhole one.
All right, I'm back on top. All right, so that's the VR news, guys. This is just a train wreck. So people are like, "Oh man, I want Alex to have a stomach flu again because this is a disaster."
I liked it better when he was just slowly dying on the show.
Oh man. So it's exciting. I think these VR Connect events are going to be happening more often, and so we're going to get dribbled out news more and more often. And now that it's October, we're only a couple months away from 2016, and Q1 2016 is supposedly when both Oculus and PlayStation VR launch. So
supposedly.
We're going to know very soon what happens. So Fliss, do you have another story of impact you want to go through?
All right, man. Well, hey, it's not really a huge impact because the Wii U is super dead, but Mario Maker is selling
R.I.P.
tons of copies for Nintendo. Tons of them. I mean, 1 million units sold. That's a big number.
That's impressive. That is 1 in every 11 or 12 Wii U owners own a copy of Super Mario Maker.
Which is crazy for a game that basically outsources all of its development to the consumer.
Though, to be fair, I've heard that Mario Maker does an extremely good job of making a game out of its level creation. One thing I heard about this was that the game starts you off in level 1-1, the iconic 1-1, except that elements are taken out, and so you can't beat it with those elements gone. And it's like, what should you do to fix this? And so it kind of teaches you level development in a way that I think is pretty compelling, in a way that you're actually playing a level and you understand, like, oh, I need another staircase here because I simply can't make the jump across this pit without it. And so I think that's interesting, and I've found myself watching Mario Maker streams on Twitch a lot, and it's pretty exciting stuff. But all that aside, yes, R.I.P. Wii U, still very impressive sales figures for Mario Maker.
Yeah, and hopefully that means that when they make the NX backwards compatible, you hear me, Nintendo?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'll get to enjoy all those levels.
That's true. And speaking of levels, I think in this announcement, too, they announced that 2.2 million levels have been created. And so I think that's really important because it seems like Mario Maker is violating this 99-to-1 rule for user-generated content. I don't know. Fliss, have you heard of this rule?
I have not. Please enlighten me. Yeah,
so supposedly in games where user-generated content is the bulk of the content, or anyway, any game that has user-generated content, you're going to have 99-to-1. 99% of the people are never going to create a level, a stage, or whatever. They're not going to use a creator to make something that's published and shareable online. But you're going to have a devoted 1% of the community that's very, very hardcore and committed to making the content that other people can play. But with only 1 million units sold and then 2.2 million levels created, I mean, again, we can't really break that up into the statistics and the percentages here, but it seems like the percentage of the community that's at least making a level or two is far higher. And that could just be because it's Mario and it's like easier to kind of grasp for people, or it could just be that that 99-to-1 rule existed simply because people, level creators and content creation tools sucked before.
Well, and it could also just be that the content creation tools in Mario Maker are really good, right? Like you said, it kind of walks you through it and teaches you kind of what you need to start thinking about. So maybe this could be, a prelude to something bigger.
Yeah, could be. It could be. Yeah. So that's really cool. I mean, I'm glad that they're getting some financial boon off of this. I mean, Nintendo's in a decent position, but especially with the loss of Star Fox Zero for this fall release, Mario Maker's it. That's it. That's all they got on the Wii U this fall and into holiday. So, yeah. So at least it's doing well. People seem to like it. If I had a Wii U, I would 100% have a Super Mario Maker. But I don't, and that's not worth buying a Wii U for.
Yeah, and Wii U again, still just that one big title short of driving me to it, and especially with the NX. Hopefully someday around the corner. I'm willing to wait.
Yep. All right, so let me go through some quick hits then. You ready for some quick hits?
I'm always ready for some quick hits.
What do you think? What do you think of my gun?
I think you've got small arms.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
give you a point for that one.
Thank you.
I'll give you a point for that one.
3-2.
Small,
Catch it up.
Okay. You got that double pun there.
Thank you.
The elusive double pun still only counts for 1 point.
Pretty sure that should be double points, but whatever.
That's why you're a That's why you're a sociologist. You're a social scientist, man. You're not a real scientist like me.
Whoa! We're not starting this. You can assault my profession all you want.
So first bit of quick hit. TwitchCon happened this past weekend in San Francisco. I apologize, I did not go, but it seems like not that much happened. So
do it for the show.
Oh my gosh!
Do it for the show, he says.
It seems like not a lot happened. So maybe I'll go next year when the event's a little bit more organized. But we got a couple pieces of news. First things first, Twitch announced that they're changing the way that Twitch channels work. Currently, Twitch channels are just a hub of people to watch your previously streamed archives and to watch your current live stream. But as we've seen YouTube gaming step into the fray, and they had the user created videos, the videos on demand, and now they just added a really fully functional streaming systems. Twitch is now doing the other direction, where they've had a really fully functional streaming system in place, but now they also are adding video on demand. So now you can also upload videos to your Twitch channel. And so again, hoping to make Twitch your one-stop shop for here's videos that I've produced, and here's me playing gameplay, and then also, hey, you know that I stream and the streams work well here. So I think it's a smart move, and just trying to, again, bringing YouTube gaming and Twitch at near level full parity.
Yeah, when I first saw this piece of news, I thought, oh, well, that's nice. And the more I thought about it, I realized that with the rise of YouTube gaming, this was something that Twitch had to do. They had to jump into this game to keep people from departing for YouTube.
To be fair, though, I really have not seen any YouTuber or Twitch streamer promoting their YouTube gaming stream. So I really don't know how that's going.
I mean, I think it's just a matter of time before YouTube gaming gets bigger. It's Google.
Well, I don't know. Google has a lot of failed ventures as well.
That's true, but I don't know, man. You're right. Maybe it's the new friendlier Google with their very nearly sans serif font.
Almost sans serif.
Yeah.
It's too friendly. They're definitely doing something evil, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast, but their font is way too friendly.
Yeah.
They're definitely going
They're up to something.
They're also going to, hey, we put some satellites into space and gives you free Wi-Fi, but it also gives us the ability to fire down a laser, rain death upon wherever our satellite targets.
Yeah, man. The Simpsons had it half right. It's not Major League Baseball. It's Google. Get your tinfoil hats.
Simpsons did it. In addition to that Twitch news, there's also some news that's huge for me. Oh my god. Finally, the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita are getting an official Twitch app. Thank freaking God. I cannot tell you how annoying it is to try to load Twitch streams in the web browser of the PS4 to watch them there. It's not designed, they work, kind of, but it's not designed for them to work. It's impossible to see chat sometimes. And, yeah. So we're getting a fully featured app.
Praise whatever deity you believe in, because this is great. This is awesome.
Praise Twitch new? Huh? Like this new?
No. That
Oh,
was,
come on!
That was not only not funny, it was offensive.
Gosh dang it.
Your effort is appreciated, though.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, but I'm really excited about this, too. I totally agree with you. Watching Twitch on the PS4 was, up until this point, extremely bothersome, a total waste of effort and time for a lower quality than what we experience, and this is just great. This should have been something that happened a long time ago. I'm very happy that it's happening now.
Xbox One had it for a long time.
Yeah.
Everything has had it for a long time. It's pretty abysmal that the PlayStation didn't have it, but thank freaking gosh that we're finally getting a Twitch app. It's coming out this fall, so TBA, there's still no official release date. Hopefully soon. The sooner the better, because I can't. It's so bad. So bad, man.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see your mug up there on my TV playing some Hearthstone. You did quite well, didn't you, this season?
I did. I only played ranked mode on stream, so all of my ranked play was streamed. And I got to rank 5 pretty handily, pretty easily.
Congratulations.
I
I topped out at 12
What'd you end up?
myself this season. Not bad for free-to-play player.
Yeah. You're gonna have to bend this for a free to play player thing, man. You've been playing for months and months now.
Free to play.
Oh gosh, yeah. You just gotta. Oh, I didn't do well in this test. Free to play. Yeah, free to play.
Although actually,
I asked this girl at a bar. She turned me down. Whatever. That's free to play anyway.
Free to play. Yeah, I didn't buy her a drink, so free to play.
Hey, can I talk to you? Oh. Two whiskeys, two whiskey sours. Oh, I'm not paying for hers. You're getting your own, right?
Your own, right? Free to play.
Free to play.
There's got to be a dating sim like that now that we think about it.
I know, or at least now there will be.
Now there will be.
Bloxidus, you do computer stuff. Make it happen.
Yeah, we're counting on you, buddy.
Speaking of not free to play, but okay, we're introducing a brand new section right now, right in the middle of news and views.
What?
It was Alex was right.
This sounds.
He was so right.
This sounds like it's
He's
not
so
a real
right,
thing.
Right.
Cutting me off's not going to do anything. Only I win arguments like that.
So this Alex was right section is brought to you by Activision Call of Duty Black Ops 3. So if you remember, you devout listeners of the Impact Factor, I I had a section in which it was titled Thesis Defense. And my thesis defense was that 2015 is the year that next-gen, or current-gen consoles, the PS4 and the Xbox One, became must-buy consoles. Right? We remember that? Fliss, you remember that?
I remember that. I think I pretty handily whooped you.
Oh, you're not a fan.
Oh, yeah, I did. Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
Oh, man. Anyway.
Yeah, I did.
Anyway, so Fliss...
Yeah, I did.
Fliss fruitlessly argued against... Gosh. Fruitlessly argued against me and lost the debate handily. But either way, I still maintain that 2015 is the year that you really need to have a PS4 and Xbox One if you consider, if you're involved in console gaming. I think it is the year. And I just got more supporting evidence in the news. So brought to you again by Activision, Call of Duty Black Ops 3. And so they announced in a blog post, a very subtle blog post, no big announcement, no fanfare, that the PS3 and the Xbox 360 versions of Black Ops 3 would not feature any campaign whatsoever. The innovative 4-person drop in, drop out, split decision making, epic whatever Call of Duty campaign that they've been advertising is not going to be at all in the PS3 or 360 versions.
Alex.
And so again,
Alex, I just want to say something here. I would love to gracefully admit defeat. I would love to be able to tell the folks, as it turned out, we have new evidence. We're scientists. We recognize new evidence when it comes to light. I would love to tell them that you're right here, but I can't, because no one plays Call of Duty for the campaign. Not one person plays Call of Duty for the campaign. Everybody plays Call of Duty for the multiplayer.
Okay, one, that's patently untrue. I know several in the industry, and several who kind of act like they're in the industry, myself, who play the campaign. That's the first thing I do whenever I play the Call of Duty.
Do you have a statistically significant sample?
No, they're anecdotes, but people play.
Oh, anecdotes!
You can look at the... Yeah, I do have stats. If you go onto the PlayStation, you can load up your Call of Duty game, and you can look at the trophy percentages of the story mode, right? And if you can look at your Black Ops 3, and you can look at the trophy for completing story mode, and my guess would be, I don't have it in front of me, it would be at least 15 to 20% of people complete story mode, which is a substantial portion when millions of people are buying this copy.
Yeah, but are they buying
millions of people are buying
the
this
story?
Game?
No, the story's... It's a goodie. It's added content.
It's not added content.
It is added content. It's a multiplayer game that has a story in it.
Oh my god. It's a huge piece of content. It's huge. And this PS3 360 game has a suggested retail of only $10 cheaper. It's losing an entire massive part of the game. This game is a completely handicapped version of the PS4 and Xbox One version. So handicapped, it's missing an entire game mode. And then yet you're still trying to argue that's not the year.
Because it's Call of Duty.
Can say
Battlefront comes out this year on PS4.
Oh my god, they're completely different. They're completely different things.
Yeah, but no, it's
they
Call
do
of
come.
Duty. I mean, Call of Duty isn't going to sell a console on its own.
I don't know. For people who are into it, it will.
I would be very interested to see the numbers on what segment of gamers would upgrade a console based on Call of Duty, because that actually sounds fascinating.
I mean, I think there probably is, because there's a certain segment of our population that probably buy 2 games a year, Madden and Call of Duty, and I think even they are going to realize when their games will start losing features. Yeah. Jerk. Are going to start.
I'm losing the argument, so I just have to make fun of you.
Because if they see these ads for Call of Duty and the ads advertise this, great campaign, and then they go, and as long as they're at least mildly conscientious consumers, and they find out that the PS3 version doesn't have a campaign, that's a completely handicapped feature light version, and we're going to see more of this. I think this is only the beginning of the end. This is the end, but this is a long, drawn-out end to this previous gen of consoles. And again, I think this is super compelling evidence why you really need to be in this current gen if you're a predominantly console player, because you're going to be getting these experiences. The Call of Duty 3, the Call of Duty Black Ops 3 that's on PS3 is not the same game as Call of Duty Black Ops 3 on the PS4.
Well, I still think it's not the most important piece of content. I still think that this doesn't make this the year. I'm still not sold on 2015 as the year. I stick to my original claim that 2016 is the year, but You keep believing what you want to, and we'll agree to disagree, and I'll continue to be right.
Well, if you want to rehash this argument, you can contact either of us at impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. But we'd love to also hear the news and the news items and anything else that you thought had the biggest impact. So please feel free, again, to shoot us an email at impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. That's it for our news and views. So now it's time to put things in perspective.
Perspectives.
Perspectives is part of the show, when any number of things can happen. In academia, it's when investigators share their opinions with the community at large. Here is a revolving section where we experiment with what's worth discussing. So let's get it started. This is Fliss's week, so what do you got for the folks?
Well, when we first began our perspective section, we chose an article each week to discuss. And if you want to hear some of those early discussions, I'm not sure you do, but if you do want to, you can hear them all on our archives at soundcloud.com/theimpactfactor, where every
They're
episode
all
of
up,
the show
folks.
is now up.
Everyone.
Very exciting. So check that out. But when we first started, our perspective section was pretty much limited to discussing articles. Now, since then, we've made perspectives a full rotating section with multiple different types. And I thought it was about time we kind of got back to what we were originally doing and chose an article to discuss. We're now calling this type of perspectives Review Board.
Review board.
Reviewing the work of other researchers is vital to any academic field. Sharing knowledge and critically thinking about the work of others, and definitely criticizing Alex's continued dedication to using echoes on the show,
It works, man. The folks love it.
is vital to any academic field. I don't know that you have any supporting evidence for that.
I really don't.
Anyway,
really don't.
sharing knowledge and critically thinking about the work of others allows us to advance ourselves and our work. This week, our article is The Mysterious World of Game Budgets by Ron Gilbert.
And you found this article over at Gamasutra.
Indeed, I did. Ron Gilbert is one of the leads for Thimbleweed Park, a Kickstarter-funded point-and-click adventure game currently in development. In this article, he offers an intense, in-depth look into the world of video game budgeting. He discusses everything from constantly worrying over money, and why that's a good thing, to dealing with talent, to why always paying people is the best idea. He's even generous enough to share one of his very own spreadsheets with us. So let's get started.
All right. Let's see where. Well, let's my impressions. This article, I think, is really. This is one of the reasons why Gamasutra has kind of been my go-to place for articles, because it's really the place where you get the insights from game developers and from the people who are working on games themselves into a lot of facets that you don't really think about. And budgeting for a game, especially budgeting for an indie game, is one of those things you just assume happens, right? This is one of those things that you assume, okay, sure, they have money, they get money, they put the money into things, and then it happens, and a game magically pops out. And, it's one of those things, financial budgeting is one of those things in society that you just kind of, it's one of those things, oh yeah, okay, it works because of course it works. But it's really fascinating, the talking points that Gilbert has here, because he really kind of breaks down the thought process and the mentality behind taking a limited budget, albeit more money than a lot of these people have seen before in a bank account, and making it last. And a lot of the things, it's funny too, a lot of the ways Gilbert describes his views on money as a business is kind of funny, because it's very similar to a lot of the ways I view money myself, because I think it's very important to always be conscientious of how much you have. But there's a lot to talk about here, and so let's kind of break it down into talking points. And so, Fliss, you put a great first talking point here.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, one of the things that really stuck out to me in Gilbert's discussion is he talked in a very personal way about how worrying about money is a big part of his job, and about he doesn't think that it's bad that he worries about money. In fact, he believes that that's what allows him to be effective in keeping the game on budget. He talks about something that I really am eager to discuss, where he says that part of the reason that he likes doing this is because compared to working with a publisher, right, this gives him more control, right? A publisher reduces the risk, but it also pushes down the budget and puts a lot of constraints on what you can do with it. Whereas here, he's able to manage it himself, but he carries all the risk.
Right.
So I don't know if we could say one method is superior to the other. I don't know even if we as consumers can declare one method as more beneficial to us than the other, but I don't know. One of those seems a little bit more sustainable to me, certainly. What are your thoughts?
So first things first, I want to dive into what you said. Which of those seems more sustainable to you? Because I'm curious your take on it. Because again, we discussed even last time, and how we go about thinking about and reviewing games. I'm sure you have very different thought in the process of making games too. So what side do you fall on? I'm curious.
Yeah, looking at this budget, thinking about the way the game costs are fluctuating constantly, how many other articles on Gamasutra have talked about how it's hard to predict what you're going to really need, and that's part of the problem with Kickstarter and the problem with stretch goals on Kickstarter. You've talked before on the show about how you're very critical of stretch goals and what they can do to indie game production.
Because they sometimes promise an entirely different game.
Right, so, I think you're kind of getting the idea of what I'm coming down on here. I really love a lot of games that have come out of successful Kickstarters, but I'm just not sure that this can be sustainable with consumers and Kickstarter supporters with not getting any deeper understanding. So if we don't educate ourselves further, and that's certainly what I think part of the intent of this article is, then I don't see how we can keep expecting developers to shoulder so much risk and to work for so little money against what they can get from a publisher, even for all the constraints and budgeting problems that a publisher has. We're just talking about security in your everyday life.
For sure. I think with how risk-averse the industry is, and again, how competitive, especially this independent space is becoming, I think the need for a publisher is rising, right? I think the financial risk, and certainly the risk of, dozens of employees of hundreds of these small companies are at risk of failing, because it relies on having such a strong financial wherewithal, which we'll get to in a second as one of my kind of talking points, that I think is usually lacking in developers. And so I think we're in an interesting situation, right? Because a lot of these smaller games, we're going to focus a lot of our discussion today on indies because, again, Thimbleweed Park is an indie game developed by Gilbert's team. And I think this discussion really arises around indies because traditional publishers, they've been working for a couple of decades now. They kind of understand how game budgets work, how to do the marketing and the division of resources for labor and everything. But I think what we need is a new generation of publishers that are designed and specifically tailored for this indie space. And we've seen one example, at least I know of one example, that's kind of really this kind of glowing, oasis of hope for a new kind of publishing space, and that's Devolver Digital. Devolver Digital kind of arose recently out of the aether to support indie developers as a publisher, as a publishing partner. They're a team of former indie developers and former industry workers who kind of understand what indie developers need to get their project going. So they offer, financial guidance, as well as, marketing and bringing indie games to events and to spaces. And so they kind of work to help get this game out and let the indie developers focus on what they want to do. Certainly, almost all of them want to be doing is to be developing the game and not worrying about production and finance. And so Devolver Digital, I think, has a wheelhouse of games, but some of these games that have been covered, their emphasis really, what I can see as the only commonality really between their games, is that they have this pixel art aesthetic. And so, right, some of the games that came out of Devolver Digital are, a game that I've talked about on the podcast. Titan Souls is a game that they published. Hotline Miami is another one that they've gone. But really, they've branched out and have a bunch of kind of more indie games too. So some of these, like the Talos Principle, is a fully 3D kind of puzzle exploration game a la Portal that they've supported too. And so I think we're going to need more of these publishers that really understand what indie developers need and be able to work with them in this limited space. Again, everything, at least in science world, is about specialization. And so I think we need to and have started to see the beginnings of specialization of publishers. But I mean, that's just my long-winded thoughts about it.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with you. I think that publishers are becoming more and more necessary and vital, and I think that having small publishers who understand the space, who are specialized, will let game developers do what they do best, and that'll bring us better and better games. And I think that's what ultimately will be best for the consumers.
Yeah. Like Luftrausers. That was another Devolver Digital game that I know you loved.
I loved Luftrausers, and I know that devoted listener Bloxidus loved it as well since he played it to completion. He 100%ed that game.
Same. You and me both, Bloxidus. You and me both.
So yeah, hats off to both of you gentlemen.
So really the odd man out is you, Fliss, who just clearly suck.
Hey, I like 80% of that game, okay?
Luftrausers.
Your German accent is...
Great?
It's
All
even
right.
worse than something you do really badly.
Good one, man. Nice burn.
Yeah, oof. Even I'm embarrassed about that. Let's keep going. Something that really stood out to me in this article is one paragraph that I'm just going to read to you here. Testers. One of the most important and often forgotten roles in games. It's money well spent because not testing will cost you down the road in emergency patches, dissatisfied players, and crappy review scores. So, man, it sounds like everything that I've read about video game testing makes it sound like it's a pretty miserable job, but he can't seem to value his testers enough. And actually, listening to all this, reading all this, and seeing all these things like emergency patches, dissatisfied players, and whatnot, makes me wonder how the big publishers aren't putting more testers on their games.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because he makes the distinction, too. I think it's clear to talk about what kind of testers Gilbert is specifically talking about here. And so these are... the testers that he wants are these very alpha bug testing testers. The people who are in the nitty-gritty, who are playing the, say, 5-minute section for, 3 8-hour days in a row to try and really identify every single bug that can happen. He's not talking about these beta testers that are given a really fully featured game that are really trying to kind of talk about how the entire package works, but really the people who, in this one section, in this one little platforming area, what is every single possible bug or malfunction or physics error that can happen. And it's actually astounding to me that there aren't good testers, and I think partially because I think the paid tester position has a serious recruitment problem. Back in the day, there used to be upwards mobility from that kind of tester, because you really start to understand what works in game design, what doesn't work in game design. You start troubleshooting, you understand a little bit of production because you're part of the production crew, you're moving this game along a schedule, as well as a little bit of coding too. A lot of testers kind of pick up a little bit of code so they can kind of understand, like, oh, look, I think maybe this area in the code is what's causing these errors here. And so you can really used to be able to specialize off of that and be able to get jobs. But that, anecdotally and from my experience at GDC 2015, the Game Developers Conference, I found that a lot of people were mentioning that there's no longer that kind of upwards mobility for game testers. And so I think you're losing a lot of that talent for people who just want to get that as a start. I think also it, again, naturally arises from game development software being in more people's hands for free because they're going to start by developing games, not start by testing games. But then I think it also is a recruitment problem too, because usually you'll get people, not saying a high school degree is meaningless, but you get a lot of people fresh out of high school who don't know what they want to do, who do testing for a job, and they don't necessarily always have the best, professional work ethic and, that kind of troubleshooting, that kind of mindset. So I think, honestly, from my perspective, I think it'd work for these game developers to start hiring some more scientists who are very procedural and organized with how they do stuff. And not that I've off and on considered testing, even though it's kind of a crap career, because I have that very analytical mindset. But it's shocking to me and kind of maybe gratifying to me that is an issue. It's a serious issue in the industry, and I'm sure it's an issue both in indie and in AAA.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. I think you've done a good job of justifying why you should be hired as a tester.
Yeah, anyone want to hire me as a tester, I'll take it.
Yeah, but I agree. I think that, I've read other accounts of this too, and the testing, right, it requires a certain grit or wherewithal to keep going at the same thing over and over again until you get some sort of result. Or when you find a lack of a result, that is your result. And that sounds a lot like science to me. So certainly something that we can identify with.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so it's important too, because again, like you emphasized, we'll talk about it a little bit. It's important to pay people who work for you. And again, I feel like a lot of testing and a lot of those things people just want to have for free. But Gilbert acknowledges, just like we've seen in science with internships in science, you need to have, not only do the people who are doing those jobs need to value their self-worth in a certain way, but paying them incentivizes them to do better work. It just does. People don't like working for free.
Yeah, it just, you get better work when you pay for it, right? You get what you pay for. That's just, it's true now as it ever, always has been.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly work harder when I'm getting paid. That's for sure.
Speaking of getting paid, how about the pay cut compared to like a standard job in the industry taken by the two leads? 75% less money.
Yeah.
They're working
That's crazy.
For
yeah, so
one quarter of what they could get in like a standard job.
Yeah, so yeah, that's Gilbert said if they were doing a similar job but not, but in a different space, they could be being paid 75% more. Which is insane to me. That's a lot. That's a big financial difference. That's a big monetary difference.
Right. That's huge. So talk about dedication to getting their project. I mean, I'm personally astounded by that. Because that's a huge risk. We talked about, we're talking about risk and the amount of risk, and that's just another thing added on to it. Can we really imagine something like that in another industry? Is this something that is unique to entertainment industries? Certainly there have been cult movies like Clerks, for example, made entirely on one person's credit cards. But I mean, dang, it's nobody takes a pay cut to work to open a steel mill.
Yeah, no, it's crazy too, and we've seen the people in charge taking pay cuts before, but traditionally that takes form as they don't get the bonus that they were going to give themselves at the end of the year, right? They're not actually taking substantial pay cuts. I mean, we've seen pay cuts in, was it Nintendo? Satoru Iwata took a substantial pay cut or something. Or somebody took a...
You have this pay.
But still, that's not 75%ing your pay.
No, it's
crazy.
not.
I think also, though, this does reflect how this video game development is also an art, right? I mean, people suffer for their art, and I don't agree that it should be how it is because video games are so big, but indie developers are suffering for their art.
Also, pay your artists.
Almost without question.
Pay your artists. If you hire a band, pay them. Understand that art is a job. Pay your artists, please. Be they painters, musicians, or video game developers. Right? I don't think that the fact that they're doing art should justify them not getting paid.
Yeah, but it's tough. I mean, I think part of it arises from how competitive the environment is, right? Because so many people release games. You're releasing in such a crowded space that you got to do something. You only have so much money. Indeed.
So, hey, you're definitely more kind of into the indie scene than I am, partially because you've had your indie station for longer than I have.
Oh my God, the Indie Station 4.
What do you think? I mean, do you think that this is kind of like common to how a lot of indies are made? I mean, the financial acumen on display here is pretty impressive. Does every indie team have somebody like this?
Yeah, so this is actually, this is something I wrote in the notes that I think is worth discussing. And I'm curious if you see this in social science as well. But Gilbert has, I think, a pretty uncanny financial wherewithal on display here. We see how he breaks down the numbers and the figures. He's even nice enough to provide us with a spreadsheet to look at. But how common is this? And what I say is how we can relate to this is I see something very similar in the academic biomedical science sphere, because I see these parallels pretty clearly. Because a lot of these indie game developers are just that. They're developers. They want to make a game that really speaks to them, that they've got some, kind of core belief in, that they think, is an expression of their ideas. And so usually these people are artists, programmers, or game designers. A lot of these people aren't coming from, market background or financial background or accounting background. And usually your budget is so small when you have an indie team. The people you hire need to be people who can make games. They need to be the coders and the artists and the sound designers and the programmers and the game designers, so on and so forth. And I see that in biomedical science a lot because as you progress through this academic track of going to undergrad and then doing your PhD program and then doing a postdoctoral scholarship and then on to becoming an independent principal investigator, never along that way are you trained in being a manager. But the principal investigator position is nearly, especially in this grant light phase that we're working in, is so manager heavy. Like that position, you need to be your whole job is a manager, right? Your whole job is resource management and human resources management, people management, and lab management. But like none of your training up to that point actually qualifies you to be good at that. And so I wonder if there is or should be some sort of financial planning training for some sort of course that aspiring gaming devs can take so that they can have this financial wherewithal that Gilbert displays, so they can actually be able to manage money smartly. Because I can't even, so few indie games, we're seeing a lot of indie games, but I can't even think of the hundreds or thousands that have died at various points in development just because money was mismanaged.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring this up. I think in terms of the social sciences, there's almost a different problem happening, and that's primarily at the university level. But I still think it's analogous, where a lot of universities are moving away from tenured faculty to adjunct faculty. And the original idea of adjunct faculty was never to replace tenured faculty, but rather to supplement them and to help a university fill out maybe more obscure or smaller courses, right? But now you have adjuncts teaching like the core stuff that should be done by graduate students, that should be done by tenured professors and their kind of research units, if you will. So what we're seeing is kind of a depletion of the scholars who can get tenured positions, and that's moving them out into other industries. And so I think that we're seeing sociologists kind of take their knowledge and try to apply it in other industries that maybe they were not originally trained for, and they're getting on-the-job training, they're doing government work, or they're going into private industry. A lot of entertainment industries are looking at sociological analysis to try and get a better handle on their communities. And this is very relevant to games, right? Because we're seeing a lot of these kinds of analytical techniques being applied to games. So it's almost as if we were saying to these developers, well, it's great that you studied game development, but now you have to go get a job as a manager or as a financial analyst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. And I feel like this is all part of a larger issue is, what will it take for the video game industry to really adapt to its modern situation? And we talked about this last week with the SAG-AFTRA voice actor strike, and kind of the pushback that we've seen from that strike from video game developers are like, hey, we don't have a union, we don't get residuals, we don't get return bonuses, we don't have some of these protections. And it seems like in a lot of ways, both unionization and organization of financial resources or publishers that specifically exist to support an indie scene, when are we gonna get an industry that really feels like it's adapted and moved on? It's still it seems a lot of it, other than a couple of the big publishers, your Ubisofts, your EAs, your Activisions, it's the Wild West out there for video game development, and it seems like it's a very slow industry to adapt on a kind of business, financial, management sense.
Yeah, certainly. It seems like they're very much behind the times. I don't think that this is uncommon for entertainment industries. I mean, look at how behind the times Hollywood is, in so many ways. And that's an even bigger industry. But, when will video games catch up? I think video games will catch up when we consumers start pushing for it more. And I think that's why Ron Gilbert deserves a lot of credit for being so forthright and so open with all this stuff, because I think that this is an article that I think everybody listening should go and take a look at, because it's personal, it's well written, and it's brief, and it gives you a real sense of what the developers are going through to try and make this game.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally agree with the point. I think his financial advice is also sound in general. I mean, again, as a graduate student who is living with a teacher, we're not racking in the big bucks. But, I think through having a financial sense and treating your money always like you never know when you're going to have to spend it, I think is the best policy. And, even though I'm a graduate student and she's a teacher and we live in probably the most expensive city in America, one of the most expensive cities to live in the world, we've managed to accrue some savings because I think I've always treated our money like this is not enough. This could be depleted in a second. one of the things that Gilbert writes about is he says you need to treat $500,000 like you would treat $500, like you would treat $50, like you treat $5. Every single dollar, every single cent matters. And so I think that's
just good life advice.
It's just good life advice, right? I mean, that $5 coffee that you want, that matters.
Yeah, that important.
Those $60 concert tickets, those matter. It's not saying you can't buy the $5 coffee or the $60 concert tickets or the $800 TV, but you need to know how that fits into the bigger picture of your finances. And so I think it's really cool to see how that advice can carry over and support an indie studio like Gilbert's in making Thimbleweed Park.
Yeah, man. Well, there you go. There you got it, folks. Sound financial advice here on the Impact Factor. We're not only advising you
right.
about your health, we're advising you about your finances. This is basically your one-stop podcast.
I mean, why listen to anything else? Well, you get video game news, you get perspectives, you get medical advice, financial advice.
You heard it on the Impact Factor.
You heard it on the Impact Factor.
Right, so again, that was our perspectives this week. It was The Mysterious World of Game Budgets by Ron Gilbert. We found that over at Gamasutra. We'll have a link in the description. So check it out.
Yep.
Take a look. Read the article. Thank you to Ron Gilbert for being so honest and so helpful in giving us an idea of what it's really like to try and budget for an indie game.
Absolutely. Now that our work is done and logged, let's get into our experimental methods.
Experimental methods.
In experimental methods, Fliss and I talk about the video games we've been playing recently. No papers or pipettes, cells, or census here, just our words. We look at what works, what doesn't, and what we're looking forward to testing. So Fliss! Experiments. You, me, experiments. What you been running?
Yeah, man. So, hey, I predicted it would be a long-running experiment last week, and it's looking like that's how it's going to go for Super Time Force Ultra. I beat a couple of levels during the week. At your suggestion, I finally got to the 1990X levels, which were entertaining, but pretty much just entertaining. They were funny, there were some good jokes, but I don't know. I didn't groove on it maybe as much as I'd hoped to.
Not even the Thunderdome boss fight?
All right, well, okay, so we're going to talk about boss fights in a minute. Hold on. All right, we're going to talk about boss fights. The other set of levels that I dug into were like the 637 or the medieval levels.
Medieval levels, yeah.
And I really enjoyed that aesthetic through the first couple of those levels. Having my minigun spinning up and like shooting all these like robots with like a castle in the background. And having a giant missile as a battering ram. Like, that was one of those places where, like, the humor of the game was definitely working for me. Absolutely.
You have that contrast,
Yeah, it was great. Very humorous. Really enjoyed them. I especially enjoyed that battering ram level where you're trying to protect your missile all the way to the gate. Cool level design. A lot of fun to play. And also really, really fun to watch on the replay. Boss fights. Let's talk boss fights. Okay, the 637 boss is the boss that got me to understand your complaints about timing everything perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
You
can check that review over on theimpactfactor.blogspot.com.
Yeah, and read it because he's right. That if you don't set it up, if you don't layer things really well early on in that fight, you're not gonna do it. It's not gonna happen. So that was very frustrating. That definitely took the wind out of my sails for a while. The 1990X levels, I played them with a Japanese friend who was over while we were playing. So takes a lot from Mad Max, which takes a lot, and Mad Max also inspired Hokuto no Ken, Fist of the North Star. So we were both really, really enjoying that aesthetic. The boss fight, the Thunderdome boss fight, was, of the bosses I've faced so far, that was the one I've enjoyed the most. It was, It was not easy, certainly, but having done 637 or whatever it was, the medieval one,
whatever it was, yeah, medieval
it
one.
it was refreshing, right? Because it was not as frustrating, and I hate to like praise a boss fight as being not as frustrating, but I mean that's what it was, and it was entertaining.
Yeah, it's fun. You get to fight all those pigs that come out, and then the dude, and it's cool to see the Thunderdome in the background too.
Yeah, it's fun to get to hop into that world. If anyone wants to make a Super Time Force like game or a Contra-like game set completely in the Mad Max Hokuto no Ken universe, I am there. I will buy it so fast.
Well, you didn't buy the Avalanche's Mad Max game that's out on PS4.
I have not bought it. Have you?
No. I have no interest. But since you love that world so much, I don't know. I thought you'd be on top of it.
Allow me to be clear. I want to play in that world. I don't want to, like, be Mad Max in that world. I want to just kind of explore it. And that's why I don't play a lot of the Hokuto no Ken games that have come out in Japan. Because I don't want to be Kenshiro. I just want to explore that world.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of new games, though, and speaking of exploring a world, you also have another game to tell the folks about.
I do. As I continue to work through my backlog of PS3 games, I started up Batman Arkham City this week. Getting warmed up. I know you finished Arkham Knight at great length. Talked about it at great length.
It took, I don't know, I felt like it took forever to beat that game.
It also
like
took
a whole
forever
month.
to hear you talking about on the podcast.
Hey.
But no, Arkham City, having a lot of fun. So my friend was over, right? And he's playing through Arkham Asylum, which is no small feat because my copy is obviously entirely in English. So major props to my buddy and his incredible proficiency in English. But so we were playing through that, and it gave me a hankering for the Arkham games again. So I figured it was time. I'd had enough time between Arkham Asylum and now that I wanted to pick up Arkham City. And right off the bat, I've got a couple things. The premise is ludicrous.
It's Batman, though, so, I mean, when is the premise not ludicrous?
Okay, but, like, the premise of Arkham Asylum was cool, right? Like, the Joker takes over Arkham Asylum. The premise of Arkham City is, like, between games, we've built a giant prison in the middle of Gotham where we just throw criminals in and let them kill each other.
Yeah, but that's always what Arkham City is. You saw that in the Batman movies, too.
Yeah.
Kind of had Arkham City.
Yeah, but I didn't like Arkham City in the movies either. But my point is that I'm enjoying, the mechanics are still good. I really like that you start with all your gadgets that you unlocked in the first game. That definitely gives it a sense of like continuing to get better. I also like the Dark Souls phenomenon, or the Souls phenomenon, where like you can feel yourself getting better at the game. Getting better at the combat system, doing the Predator missions more quickly. I like that. The aesthetics of the game are not as satisfying so far as Asylum was. I think it's part because I'm just not into the Arkham City idea, but it's just not like a world that I'm excited to spend time in right now.
Well, you start getting the issue that was highlighted even further in Arkham Knight. We were exploring a big city, but there's no one there other than people to beat up. So it doesn't really feel very alive, or worthy of your time. Whereas Arkham Asylum, sure, it was pretty abandoned, but the environments were kept relatively small and were dense with criminals, but that made sense because, right, you were just in an asylum. So, and
even in the asylum, right, you ran into lots of guards, you ran into, orderlies, you ran into, it was populated. There were people there. There were enough NPCs to make it feel like you had people that you needed to save, and sometimes you did and sometimes you didn't, and that made it a really good game. So we'll see. I'm going to get more in Arkham Knight. You'll hear about it again next week, in addition to a brand new game. So please be excited.
Oh my gosh, please be excited. Yeah, how far are you? How much have you played?
I think I've played about the first 2 hours.
Okay. The game is not super long.
It's what, 30 hours? 20, 30 hours?
No, it's probably less than that. I bet it's 15.
Oh, okay.
Just do story.
Oh man, well if I weren't going to be out of town this weekend sports balling, I might even finish it.
What sports ball are you doing all weekend?
I'm playing basketball, man. I'm all kinds of excited. It's great. Day 1 is our prefecture-based tournament. I'm gonna rep some Ishikawa, and then day 2 we have our mixer tournament. All the teams get scrambled up. Everyone wears costumes. We play basketball in costume. You have not lived until you've played basketball on the same team as Godzilla against Vegeta and Piccolo. That's living.
I think I've lived plenty without having to experience that.
Well, what were you doing this week while you were not experiencing the greatness that is playing basketball in Halloween costumes?
Okay, well, my game, I've been playing a lot of games, but I want to focus in on a game I've played and beaten recently. And it's a game that I really advocate every single person who's listening to the podcast at this point, and every single person who knows me, or any single person who plays games at all, you should play. And that's SOMA. This is the new game that's coming out of Frictional Games, the people who brought you Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and is seriously one of the best games of the year. I think probably one of the best games I've played in a long time, and despite there's some differences, but I think I saw an article on Polygon saying that SOMA is better than BioShock, and reading the article, I can't say I disagree too vehemently.
Wow, that is intense, because you loved BioShock.
Yeah, BioShock's a great game.
It is a great game.
If you played it, you would know.
I did play it.
Did you beat it?
Yes.
You played BioShock Infinite?
I've not played all of BioShock Infinite.
Yeah, okay. Well, okay, good. All right, we gotta just keep it clear to the folks that you're a non-completionist gamer. Anyway, so SOMA is...
That's probably true. Keep going.
So, SOMA is a game that asks huge questions, and it does so, I think, thoughtfully, completely, and the most uniquely that I've ever seen in a piece of entertainment, and certainly in the most competently that I've ever seen in a piece of video game media. And so this is a game I really hesitate to talk about at length because I don't want to spoil it. There are spoilers out there. You can find spoilers, but I'm not going to spoil the premise because I think it's very important that you kind of experience that as blind as possible. But what you need to know is that it's a first-person exploration / survival horror game. So again, the order there is important. It's about exploring first, and then there's survival horror secondly. You play as a character. His name is Simon Jarrett. After a brief prologue that I won't describe, he kind of finds himself locked in a small room, and it looks and sounds like you're on some sort of derelict space station. But after exploring a little bit, you find out that you're inside Pathos 2, or Pathos 2, whatever you want to call it, an underwater deep sea research facility at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And so the game is all about understanding who you are, where you are, when you are, and what's happened to Pathos 2. And you kind of quickly discover maybe you're not in the same year that you started the game at.
Whoa.
Something went very terribly wrong, certainly in the station, but maybe to the planet in general. But the thing is, it asks a lot of great questions. The game is all about philosophy and psychological unnervingness and terror. It's a game that asks you questions about what is life and death in the context, especially of AI. So this is not a great spoiler here. There's robots. You've seen them in the trailer. It really kind of calls into question what defines humanity, the contextualization of life and death, and then seriously questions about artificial intelligence and what that might mean for identity and consciousness and life.
And how long is the game?
Broad summary. So the game is 8 to 10 hours, roughly. But so first things first, the game is scary. But more than that, the game is unnerving. It's unsettling. It's deeply, affecting, but not in a jump scare kind of way. SOMA isn't a game that wants you to scream or shriek or jump or, poop your pants. It's a game that wants you to lay in bed at night after you finish playing it and be like, oh my god, did that really happen? Oh god, what would that mean if I were there? What does it mean for the context of the human race? And if I were in that situation, what would I do? It's a game that really makes you stop and think. It is, again, by the guys who did Amnesia: Dark Descent, so there are monsters. So that's one thing to consider. There are some monsters you have to avoid, and they are terrifying, and it does follow the design principle that kind of was reinitiated by Amnesia: The Dark Descent and now been more popularized by these survival horror games where you can't fight back against enemies. And so a lot of those games have kind of gotten into the thing, you see an enemy, sneak around in the dark, hide in a cabinet, wait for them to pass, and then try and sneak past them.
Right.
Which is fine, but not always the most compelling. But the monsters in SOMA, I think, are some of the best I've seen in any horror game, because each one is a puzzle and each one is an adventure. So you do have some of your traditional monsters that, like, if you get in their line of sight, they'll chase you and they can hurt you and stuff. It's not a one-hit kill, thankfully. It's a two-hit kill, so that's always good. But there are also monsters that completely act completely differently. So there's one monster you face that only can see you if you're looking at it. So just like...
Oh, man, that's terrifying.
It's terrifying,
That's
right? Like
terrifying.
if you like turn around the hallway and like you're just like looking like you normally would, you look down the hallway and it's there, it'll instantly like come to you and start chasing you because you looked at it and it saw you. But then it creates like this new metagame of you kind of see where it might spawn and then you try to quickly glance around the room and then you need to navigate by looking at the floor and trying to walk your way through this area because like you can't, if you look up, you're going to see the monster. And so sometimes you're even like a couple feet from this monster.
Oh.
But like he doesn't see you.
Oh, I'm getting chills right here. You're just describing
I know,
it. Man, woo.
it's crazy. And then there's another one that's this kind of like hulking mass that is completely blind. You could be, again, right next to it and won't see you, but it follows you by sound. So so you need to crouch and walk around extremely slowly, which makes it even more unnerving that's right next to you. But SOMA has this kind of physics-based interaction system where you can pick up objects, rotate them. It helps build the world. You can like look at pamphlets and desktops to try and like read and get background, listen to audio logs. But also lets you like pick up for like an immersion's sake, trying to make you in the experience. You can pick up like objects and throw them around. So like you could pick up a tin can or a broken like keyboard that you find and throw it against the wall, and it'll go chase that because you made noise. And so that monster you need to lure it away with sound to do stuff, but at the same time, you need to like open doors and flip command switches that make noise. So the second you flip a door that you need to open, he's going to be coming running right where you're at because you just made a noise.
Oh, man.
It's a great balance. It's an incredible game. And honestly, it's a game that has really lasted with me even after having finished it now for a week. I'm still thinking about the ramifications of the story and the world. And I think it's hard to talk about it because, and I know I'm going long-winded here, but the story is really, truly amazing and impressive and substantial and important and great. And I think even that for the most squeamish survival horror players, this is really, really worth playing because it's not that kind of scary. And I do think anybody can get through it. And man, it is good. And the ending, oh my god, this is the last thing I'll say. The ending is one of the most sheer fear-inducing, terror, palm sweaty, just absolute stressful moments I've had in any piece of entertainment, any piece of media I've ever experienced. And it was an existential dread too. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get killed. It was the idea of what was happening was so deeply unsettling to my existence as a physical flesh and blood human that it's just, oh my god, it's great.
Man, yeah, I don't think you can get a recommendation stronger than that, and I kind of want to go play this game right now.
It's phenomenal. I'm glad it's doing well. There's an article posted on Polygon just this morning. In the first 10 days, they've sold 92,000 copies, so they're nearly at 100K.
That's great.
Which it's doing pretty well. For themselves. Not great, not like huge numbers, but I'm really glad people are buying it. This is a game one of 2015's best, one of this console generation's best.
What's it?
Absolutely, go out and play it. It's on PS4 and PC.
And what's it priced at right now?
It's a $30 game.
Okay, so there you go. Not even that
So
expensive.
like you're getting a full experience like that you would get from a AAA narrative game for half the price.
Awesome.
I have a review over on the impactfactor.blogspot.com. I rave about it. I say things more eloquently there than I said now. But seriously, SOMA is so good. Yeah, because I was a fan of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, for sure. But I didn't think, it was great, but for me, horror games, they struggle in a lot of ways to be great. There's a lot of game design elements that work against horror games being good. But I seriously think SOMA is such an accomplishment, such a feat. I'm so glad that I played it. I really think everyone, if you're a self-respecting gamer, especially one who cares about story and narrative in games, SOMA is an absolute must-play.
Oh man, I feel like that last comment was definitely just pointed, spirit of my heart, making me go out and spend my money on this game, man. Like you hadn't already sold me on it.
It's short too, man. You can finish it in maybe it take you 10 to 12 hours because it all depends on how efficiently you solve puzzles, which are great, by the way. I didn't even get into those. The puzzles are very organic and straightforward and less so difficult to solve, but more difficult, oh man, did I really solve the puzzle by having to do that? Well, what does that mean? Am I a bad person now for solving that puzzle? Or what does that mean? And then basically how quickly you can sneak around monsters, which I'm pretty good, so I snuck around them pretty fast, but
it might take you a little bit longer. Yeah. When the zombie apocalypse comes, my plan is definitely just to have enough shotgun shells.
So seriously, read my review. If I haven't sold you here, read my review. I think it does a good job of also selling my excitement there. And it's not just excitement. I think the more I reflect critically upon this game, the more impressed I get.
Awesome. Well, there we go, man. Well, hey, I don't think we can follow up with anything better in terms of games talk this week, the raving about SOMA. So why don't we finish up with some odds and ends and take it into our errata section?
All right. So Fliss, do you have any errata, odds, and movie, TV, life, general that you have as a recommendation or something you want to talk about?
I do, actually. I want to recommend an anime to everybody. Big surprise.
Oh god, great. We go from SOMA, the peak of like narrative storytelling, to freaking lame, weak butt anime.
Well, ignoring your obvious lack of education about a great medium, I actually am going to recommend an anime that I think you need to watch, dude. And I think that both you and Justine will enjoy if you give it a chance. It's called Seirei no Moribito, or Moribito, Guardian of the Spirit. And I thought about you specifically because it avoids a lot of the problems that you always talk about with anime. It does a lot more showing than telling.
Thank God.
There is lots of action, and the aesthetics are totally awesome. It's set in a kind of swirled up Japan, Korea, China empire with neighboring countries that are also kind of bits and pieces mixed up. It has very much an Avatar, The Last Airbender initial feel to it, but takes kind of a darker fantasy dive into that kind of world setting. So very cool, great aesthetics, beautifully animated, excellent mix of hand-drawn and computer animation to the background. So beautiful story, and the main character, the main character is a female bodyguard who kicks all kinds of butt with a spear. So an unusual, totally non-fan servicey protagonist for the show. So
that's also good.
Very cool. Check it out. That's Seirei no Moribito, or Moribito, Guardian of the Spirit. It's my recommendation this week. I'm halfway through season 1 and enjoying it quite a bit. What about you?
So how do you consume your anime, Fliss? Because you a Crunchyroll kind of person?
Actually, I'm mostly watch on Netflix because there's enough on Netflix right now that I'm not caught up on, that I'm working on. So Moribito is on Netflix, so that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. So I really didn't have a recommendation, but in your description, you reminded me of something that another piece of media I've consumed in the meantime. Avatar. I think the first Avatar, or like the first Avatar where Avatar Aang and the Airbenders, I think that is an interesting series that does some stuff well, but I don't think holds up to the scrutiny of time super well. And I think, especially because it was designed predominantly as a children's show, there are certain weak facets of kind of how character development happens and how the show progresses, and certainly how they always need to infuse kind of juvenile humor into what happens. But kind of off and on, I've been watching the sequel series to that, Avatar: The Legend of Korra.
Yeah, man.
And I think that series is phenomenal. I think that series does everything that the first Avatar series did, but better. I really enjoy the protagonist, Korra, who, like the anime you just recommended, is also a strong female character, and she's drawn strong, too. She's buff. She got some guns. And then really kind of expands upon a lot of themes there. It takes it to a darker, more mature place. You still have kind of that little kitty kind of humor, but I think the creators acknowledge that their audience kind of craves that more, maybe not adult, but teen storytelling. And so I appreciate that. So I just finished the third season of it. Book of Change, I think is what it's called, was just posted on Amazon Prime Instant. And Justine and I consumed that in a weekend. We watched the entire season. And I would highly recommend it. The first season is great. I think the second season, the Book of Spears, is a little bit weak. I'm not sure if they knew exactly where they were going with it. But Book 3, Book of Change, is phenomenal. And they went to some places that I didn't think they would go in an Avatar series, like namely killing someone on screen, which is a big place for ostensibly a kids show. But yeah, it touches on a lot of cool subjects. I think one of my main problems with anime and cartoons in general is the action is so incomprehensible. Like, you never know what the heck is happening in a fight. It's horrible. It's a seriously endemic problem because anime is so low budget that they just will use stills interacting with stills, and it's boring. But the animation in Avatar is gorgeous. You always understand what's happening in a fight because everything is fluid.
Well, to be clear here,
continuous.
before we get our heads bitten off, right? Like, we acknowledge that Avatar is a Western show heavily inspired.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Anime.
Yeah.
But,
I'm saying,
no. And
cartoons and anime.
I mean, I am happy to talk. We can do Avatar talk. We can do a whole podcast of Avatar talk, man. I like it. We talk about worlds that I like to hang out in. That's definitely one that I find fascinating. I think that the first Avatar series is very much an early teen coming of age drama. And I think that it's like a young adult novel. So it has some of the same tropey problems as that, but it's overall still very satisfying. I think Legend of Korra...
And the main two characters are insufferable. I hate Aang and I hate Katara.
I mean, if you'd said Sokka, we would have had a problem here, but...
I did hate Sokka at first, but then he got better. I mean, clearly, though, Zuko and Toph are the best two characters.
I mean, yeah, Zuko is great. I really like his uncle.
Hello? Oh, yeah, Iroh, too. Hello, Zuko here.
The look on your face. I wish you could show it to people.
But anyway, continue what you're saying.
Yeah.
But you were leading into your discussion of Korra.
Yeah, I think Korra represents that maturation of the show and of the audience. And that's a really cool thing to see it grow. Ash Ketchum was 10 when I was 10. I'm 25 now, and Ash Ketchum is still 10. But Korra kind of represents that maturation of the storytelling, and I think that's great. So, yeah, and to answer your criticism of anime, Moribito, very high budget show, gorgeously animated. There has yet to be a single moving quote unquote still that I've noticed.
All right, that's good. Because I mean, that my criticism wasn't that obviously not that Avatar is an anime.
Right.
It's a criticism that holds for both American animation as well as anime. That just usually action is incomprehensible because they're so cheap about it.
Yeah, not a problem that in some of our favorite series like Batman Beyond, for example, or Gargoyles.
Action is very constant. Yeah.
Gargoyles is great. Don't
I recommend it. I really wish the last season was up. But it's not yet, so I just gotta wait for that. But I'll watch it once it's up for free.
Well, it's interesting to me that you mentioned Zuko because on my blog this week I wrote about cosplay, and Zuko is a character that I would love to cosplay, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable with doing so because as a white guy, I have loads and loads of characters for whom to choose from as a cosplay, and Zuko, it represents a very deep, complex, and very much Asian character to think about. So something that I've had to think about. And on my blog this week, I wrote about that. I wrote about my discussion and my internal struggle with characters that I feel I can and can't cosplay for just kind of narrative and reasons of privilege. So check that out. And I'll have part 2 of that coming up next week, where I talk about characters that I've thought about with gender switching and the dynamics of that and the group dynamics of doing that, which is probably a post that could be summarized as, if you make Furiosa a guy, it ruins everything.
All right, so we're already leading the outro anyway, so Fliss, finish it up here.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, check all that stuff out on flissofthenorthstar.blogspot.com. That's my blog. I also posted some travel photos there from my vacation of some of the best food I have ever eaten. So check that out. I'm happy to talk about all this stuff while I play games on stream. I haven't been on a very good streaming schedule lately. I'm hoping to amend that this week. So please come hang out on twitch.tv/FlissOfTheNorthStar. And you can always tweet at me at @TheCFliss. That's at TheCFLISS.
Awesome. You can find each and every episode of the podcast on SoundCloud.com/TheImpactFactor or by looking up The Impact Factor on the iTunes Store. We love reposts, favorites, reviews, everything and anything you do really helps grow our community. We appreciate it. More listenership is always better for you, the listener, and for us. Speaking of iTunes, we have another new review. It's our last one again, so hopefully we get another new one in between next episode. But we got an iTunes review from user and avid listener, Tetris for Me. So Tetris for Me writes, TIFFTW. Up-to-date video game news along with a sense of fun and a palpable friendship. Once you start, you'll be hooked 5 out of 5. So thank you for listening, Tetris for Me. Thank you for tuning in every episode. We really appreciate you wrote us a review on iTunes. You're a good dude.
Yeah, man, we really appreciate that. We're glad you're hooked on the show. We're hooked on your comment.
We're hooked on phonics. So you can follow me on Twitter at Alex Samocha. It's Alex Samocha, like the coffee. You can check out The Impact Factor on YouTube by clicking the link in the description for past episodes, Let's Plays, previous Twitch archives, and more. You can watch me play games live Wednesdays and Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Time at twitch.tv/megalodonphd. I'll be playing a bunch of different games in October, so please be excited for that. But Hearthstone is certainly one of them, so if you're excited for that, please come in, hang out. The Impact Factor is an extension of my blog about video games. That's the impactfactor.blogspot.com. Check there every Tuesday for a new review or article. This week I reviewed the excellent SOMA, and every Friday for my curation of the best written pieces from around the world in gaming in a section I call News and Views. Send any comments and suggestions for the podcast to impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. And Fliss, until next time, it's fall, baby. Make an impact.